Right.
Goodness gracious. Well, we are going to get started here in just a minute, but we're going to talk this morning about the Disaster Resilience Grant. So, this might be the perfect meeting for you, even if it's the wrong
Okay.
meeting.
So Michael's here with me.
So, welcome everyone. It is 11. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're here to just share some information and do some Q&A about the Disaster Resilience Grant. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy Potts. And she's going to introduce Michelle Blevins from her group, and she's going to give us some basic information. So, Amy, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you always for your partnership. I'm Amy Potts, and I'm the project director for the Kentucky Disaster Behavioral Health Resilience Grant. And this grant was awarded to the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental and Intellectual Disabilities from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, and it's really to offer post-disaster behavioral supports in 21 counties, which are in your region. And it's really referring to disasters that actually happened back in 2019, because research has really shown us that the rates of psychological distress, and you all know this, really increase after a disaster in phases. So this grant's helping us offer some mental health resources to residents as they recover from these disasters. So we are working in partnership with your community mental health centers. And as you can see, this grant has an incredibly fast timeline. So what I want to do today is introduce you to Michelle Blevins, and she is our Assistant Director at the Department of Behavioral Health, and she was also a grant author of this grant. And so she's going to kind of help share with you how we envision that this partnership with FRISC is going to work within this grant to really help with outreach to help serve these communities. So with that said, I'll just let you take it away, Michelle.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for being here with us. It's kind of, like she said, on a fast track, and it's got lots of pieces and parts, but essentially, this is the first time that we've actually had funding that was set aside from Congress to SAMHSA to really address the behavioral health needs of individuals as part of a disaster response effort. And so for those of us in behavioral health, that was really exciting, and we wanted to take full advantage of that. So Kentucky did opt to apply for this grant. It was like, a whirlwind application process. They gave us like 10 days to write it and get it submitted. And so several of us got together and just wanted to try to use the funding as well as we could to sort of solicit, the collaboration of all of our partners and that kind of thing. The grant's really kind of broken into two parts, one to serve children and one to serve adults. And with children, it was K through 12 specifically. And so what we did with regard to the children's side of things was just kind of thought about the most important partners and how we might address some of the needs of the kids and families that our community mental health centers serve, that our communities are engaged with as far as assisting them with just the fallout, if you will, of having been impacted by a disaster, and in this case, a weather-related disaster, you'll hear us say. So obviously the FRISCs came to mind, and really just felt like we were trying to offer some funding to, do what you do, not necessarily to do anything new and different or add any workload to you, but just to kind of make sure that we could partner with you and just lend support to all the work that you're doing. Sort of coincidentally, obviously, the pandemic, has made everything a little turned upside down, and so we, recognize that also is impacting this. But really, just in the short frame, our goals for this funding are to support the work that you already do with the kids and families in your schools, and to, offer any kind of assistance we can sort of in the scope of disaster response or preparedness, particularly around behavioral health. So we're not, our main emphasis is not on, food, shelter, clothing, water, like, some of the response efforts. However, knowing that you've just experienced another disaster, we know that lots of you are probably tapping into sort of emergency response kind of efforts and that kind of thing. So there's not a lot of forbiddens, if you will, on this grant from SAMHSA to us. So we just tried to kind of think in broader terms and how best to address the needs of kids and families who have been impacted by a disaster. And so again, reaching out to you as a partner who has a lot of interaction with kids and families, who has the frontline knowledge of what kids might need and their families. And I think Ms. Newton gave you all some ideas and some lists, but really we wanted to support what you're already doing. So anxious to just sort of have some dialogue maybe about what that looks like, if you have questions for me. The other kind of side of it is that we did write into the grant funding to support what we think of as workforce development, trying to ensure that those who are in the behavioral health discipline as students at the post-secondary education level have some support to do practicum placements or to support people who are working towards licensure, and or to even just support some sort of what I would think of as ancillary behavioral health staff. So that might be somebody who isn't a student, but who is interested in, maybe some part-time employment or whatever, working with kids and families in the behavioral health realm. And so I know in one region, for instance, we have somebody who is a retired school person who has, a good bit of knowledge and expertise in working with your school systems and with, working with kids and families, and has a real interest and some skills in doing some counseling type work. So I think as we go forward and we talk about this grant and your role in this grant, it's kind of twofold. One of them is directly some funds that came to your FRISC to support your efforts around working with your kids and families, and just kind of having an eye on how disaster events impact your kids and families, along with lots of other things. The other side of it is this practicum or student or placement kind of thing. The funds to support those placements is not in your budget. It's not something you have to worry about. It is solely funded through the Community Mental Health Center. The Community Mental Health Center is the employer of those students or workers. What we're asking from you around that is for you to work with us and with that center particularly to make that a practicum placement that is advantageous for that student, but also for you. It's extra hands, we hope, for you to be able to do some of the things you're already doing. Now, I don't know, I'd be interested to know how many of you have had students before, or sort of ancillary staff of some type. Sometimes other grants will have that or whatever, and we can talk about that. But we don't want this to be a burden on you. We hoped that it would be a help to you. But we recognize that, it's something new and different, and just especially with the pandemic, trying to figure out the logistics of it all might be something we need to talk about. But hopefully that kind of gives you an overview. And I'm not sure, Melissa, how much knowledge they have of the actual dollar amount. And I know you all have your own plans and protocols for how you operate and report expenditures and things like that. So we just kind of need to have some conversation around some of that perhaps. But I think, I'll kind of leave it at that, and just certainly open to any questions you might have, or just if we need to talk through something, we can certainly do that. I guess I would just say it doesn't have to look the same everywhere either, but.
And I so appreciate Michelle being here and hearing that from you is helpful. Thank you, Michelle. And I thought that I was going to say some of the things that she already said. So I'm very happy that, you were here, Michelle, and said those things. And so what I think might be helpful is for us to do introductions. We wanted to wait until we kind of gave an overview because as we go around and say who we are and kind of what our role is, we wanted you guys to kind of, if you hadn't connected with the people that are in your region that you're going to be working with, we wanted you to kind of be able to listen to who those people are and get to know their faces. Because I know that our FRISC in particular, because that's what I know, are going to have some questions around some of this stuff, and we're going to allow some time for that. But we just want to make sure that you understand that if you come to us with questions about the best ways to spend these funds or some parameters, the first thing that we're going to ask is if you have had that conversation at that regional level, because there is an overarching, bigger plan that we would like for you to try to plug into, doing what you already do. So if that makes sense. So we want to make sure that you get to know those people. And I know some regions have already made contact and maybe some haven't. So we're going to take a second to do introductions, kind of listen for people in your region. And then I'm going to let Teresa Combs give a little bit more detail because we know these questions are going to come up about tracking the funds and the budget. And then we're going to allow for some questions. So I will start the introductions and then I'm going to throw it to somebody. And if we could just do it that way, I think that will be helpful. I'm Melissa Goins, and I'm the director for FRISC, and I am thankful that our partners at Behavioral Health thought of us and saw us as a place that's really well positioned to identify and get services to kids that are impacted by disaster. So I am going to throw it to Kara.
Hello, I'm Kara Markham. I'm the Youth Service Coordinator at the Martin County High School.
Do you send it to somebody, Kara?
Melissa, but it's a different Melissa.
Yeah, you guys get all the Melissas from FRISC. So I'm Melissa Newton, and I am the training and project manager at FRISC. So I'm helping just to coordinate these efforts, and glad to see everybody this morning. And I will send it over to Russell.
I'm Russell Jones, the Regional Program Manager for Region 9 for the Division of Family Resource and Youth Service Centers. And I will throw it to, since your name's on there, I'll throw it to Kathy, since your name's not your name's not up there. So Kathy, if you'll introduce yourself.
Okay, can you see me? Okay, I'm Kathy York and I am the coordinator at Harlan County High School in Harlan County. And I will contact Cecilia.
I'm Cecilia Adams. I'm the FRISC coordinator for Harlan Independent Preschool through 12th grade. And I'm in Russell's region with Kathy and Samantha. So I'm going to throw it to Samantha.
I'm Samantha Wilson. I'm the Youth Service Center Coordinator here at Bell County High School in Bell County. And I will throw it to, David, I guess. David Matthews.
Hello, I'm David Matthews with the Kentucky River Community Care, the Regional Coordinator. And let's go with Michelle.
Find that mute button, sorry. Michelle Blevins, like she said, I'm an assistant director in the Division of Behavioral Health, and I'm what they call principal investigator, which is just a fancy term the Feds use, to just do some oversight for this grant. Have a lot of history with FRISCs, though. I've written several FRISC grants over the years when they were first starting and that kind of thing, so kind of near and dear to my heart. I'll turn it over to Mr. Cornett.
Hello, I'm Kenneth Cornett with Letcher County. I'm the district contact that works with the FRIS directors. And I'll throw it to our high school director, Jennifer Honeycutt. Jennifer, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
So-
Okay, I'm at Letcher Central High School, the Youth Services Center, and I don't really, I'm using my phone. I don't see a screen where I can refer to somebody else next.
I'll do it for you, if that's okay. I'm going to send it to Samantha. Oh, have you already gone to Samantha? Oh, you did. I remember you now. How about Dane?
Hello, I'm Dane May with, I'm the regional coordinator with Cumberland River Behavioral Health, and I work in Corbin. And I'll send it to Shelley Mills.
Hi guys, I am the Director of Children's Services for Cumberland River Behavioral Health. We are the Community Mental Health Center. We consider ourselves Region 13, so it's a little bit different, I think, than your all's regions. But we cover Bell, Clay, Knox, Laurel, Whitley, Jackson, Harlan, and Rockcastle. There's 8. So that's where we do the services at. So it's nice to be here with you all.
How about Johnny?
Hey guys, my name is Johnny Jackson. I'm with Mountain, and I'll be the project coordinator for our region. Mountain is Pike, Floyd, Johnson, Martin, and McGoffin County. So it looks like I'll be working with Kara and maybe some of the other folks, and really looking forward to getting some students out there to help you guys out and to really try to help a lot of these students that's been impacted. And I always had a big respect for what the FRISC does and for all the help that you guys provide for the students in need. So I'm really looking forward to working with you guys.
All right. How about Doug Jones?
Hi, I'm Doug Jones, and I'm Region 7 Program Manager based in Moorhead. I have Gateway, Buffalo Trace, FICO, and 2 of my Sandy counties are involved in this grant. We're very excited about it. McGoffin and Martin, and we've had preliminary discussions with district contacts and all the coordinators. So we're starting to get very excited about it. Look forward to working with you, Johnny. We have not met yet, so be anxious to be able to get to know the folks from the community health centers as well. I'll throw it to how about Marcy Hale, who is representing Martin County for us today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marcy Hale with Martin County Schools. I work at the district level with FRISC financing.
All right. How about Joe Grace? Friends.
This is Joanne Grace with the Hurl Whitaker Middle School in McGoffin County. And this is Michael Helton. Go ahead, Michael.
My name is Michael Helton, and I'm with McGoffin County High School Youth Services Center.
And Mr. Warren.
I'm Chris Warren. I'm the district contact for Bell County Schools and work with Russell's region, and just glad to be a part of it.
Has everybody gone? Anybody not gone?
I'm not gone yet.
Teresa, there we go.
I'm the regional program manager for Region 8, so I cover the Kentucky River region, and it will be Letcher County, Perry County, and Breathitt County that will be involved.
And I think that's everybody. So if you don't mind, Teresa, before we go into questions, do you mind to talk a little bit about the funds and how the FRISC office is asking our FRISC to track funds and do budget amendments?
We ask that the first installment, the budget for that, for the $7,000, to be presented to your RPM by April the 15th. We will be using the budget balance sheets as a way to turn in a budget. We'll not be doing these on Frisk counts, which is normal for a budget for us, but we're going to use the budget balance sheets instead. You'll just need to submit those via email to your RPM by April 15th. Then the second allocation of the money, you will need the same format. You'll use the budget balance sheets, but those will be due to your RPM June 1st. Since we are not putting these on Frisk counts, we still want to, you know, if there are amendments or changes you need to make to that budget, we want you to communicate that with your RPM via email and get approvals that way instead of doing our normal routine of request forms and that format. So we will be okay with you doing amendments, or if it's purchases of a single item 500 or goods or services and contracts over 1,000, those approvals and stuff will be done with your RPM via email. I was trying to think, what were some of were there any of the other?
Yeah. The Munis.
Oh, Munis. If you, in order to make it easier for your district, if you want to set up a different org number, that way we, when you run your Munis report for the end of the year, the first installment that will be encumbered by June 30th, then it'll make it a lot easier on you to run those Munis reports and then have a different, we'll also ask for Munis reports for the July 1 through September 30th. The second funds needs to be encumbered by September 30th of 2021. So we'll also ask for a Munis report to be turned in for those funds as well.
I think those were the big things. We knew we were questions around that, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you guys using as many existing processes as possible. It's just we couldn't put these budgets in Frisk count because they're separate funds. So that was the only thing we had to do, is have a separate budget for them. So
yeah. And as a lot of you all are AFDs and you have you know, it just would make it easier if we kept the funds separate as opposed to adding it into your allocation and having to redo those spreadsheets and so forth. So that was why we wanted to set it up separate. We make it easier on you all.
So the Munis project would be 125G for the 7,000 and then 125H for the second part.
Yeah.
Okay. And Teresa, I talked to you one time about, could we just set up a district org for it? And is that okay instead of
that's fine
assigning it to Letcher
to that one school? Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. If that's easier for y'all to do it that way, that is fine with me.
Okay. I think it will be.
So while we have Michelle and Amy and our RPMs here, I hope that you guys were thinking of questions that you had, at least on the Frisk end, or if anybody, I mean, I'm not just talking to Frisk, if anybody on here has questions, now would be an excellent time because we have all the players in one place.
So while folks are thinking about their questions, just a couple of things. You guys can put questions in chat and I'll be happy to read those. Or since there's only about 20 of us, you can just come off mute and ask your question, and we can manage it that way. We're a small enough group that we can do that. But if you are more comfortable, you can put that in the chat and I'll be sure to watch that for you.
I'll just go ahead and kick something off if that's fine. We had to write a job description to get this posted, and we really struggled on what the duties would be of the practicum students that would be placed in the Friskies. And if you guys have any insight as to the expectations of the practicum students, that would be awesome.
Just a question before I can answer that question. When would the practicum students be on site?
Our job description got posted sometime this morning. We do have, I know our particular part of the grant is covered, has 6 positions available. We anticipate having a minimum of 6 applicants very soon. If everything played out perfect within 2 or 3 weeks, I would imagine.
It might depend on the school calendar, the post-secondary ed school calendar too. We know the timing's kind of off. So we recognize that some of them might actually be, you know, spring semester students that are kind of probably too late almost, or, you know, sometimes though other placements don't work out or they didn't get one for some reason, especially with the pandemic. I know we've had students call us and just panicking because they couldn't get their practicum placement. So it could be that you'd have one still for this, what I call school spring semester. You also have a fair number of students that try to do a practicum in sort of a condensed summer program. And so I wondered how many of you guys might have opportunities available even in the summer through the Frisks. I know the schools, you know, aren't all operational all the way through the summer, but sometimes Friskies have summer programming or something like that that you could use help with. The other thing would be to work on, you know, looking at some of it being in obviously the fall semester. And even though the grant runs out in September, I think when we get there, we could figure out a way to make it last through, you know, whatever hours they needed. Oftentimes the actual schools, the colleges and universities that are sending students to you will have sort of an outline of what they need the student to experience. And so that could guide what they do. But from my own experience working with Friskies, oftentimes students would be there, you know, anywhere from 10 to 30 hours a week. Usually undergraduate students, you know, just do 10 or 12 hours a week, and master's level students might do, you know, more. Again, some of them will work depending on when you might need them. They might work 20 hours one week and not work the next week, or, you know, obviously with spring breaks and all kinds of different things. It's really more about the hours over the course of the semester than it is hours per week for them, as long as they can kind of get all their hours in, if that makes sense. And some of those hours might even happen at the community mental health center. I mean, they're going to have to do a little orientation and some of that kind of stuff. And then they would come to your sites and potentially, you know, you would meet with maybe Dane and Cecilia. I don't know if that's the right county lineup, but anyway, you all would meet and just work with the student over, you know, like the job description and the practicum placement information that you get from the school and what your needs are, Cecilia, to kind of pan out what that might look like. And honestly, I mean, you get different students with different skills, different knowledge about different communities or whatever. You could have them research something for you. You could have them be in boots on the ground to go out and try to touch base with families that you haven't heard from. You could have them, you know, sort clothes if you've got a clothing bank in your, or a clothing kind of thing in your Frisk. You could have them learn, you know, more about the actual operation of the Frisk and help you do something, whatever that looks like. There's also the possibility that you're going to have some master's level students that are fairly adept at doing some actual case management type of functions, even some counseling, some, you know, helping a family do a budget, helping a family figure out a schedule for their child so that they're getting regular sleep, you know, whatever maybe the issue is, even some tutoring kind of stuff. I mean, it's the same kinds of things that you and your staffs do that you could expect of them within reason. You know, you're going to have to get to know the person and kind of get their skill set or their knowledge base. But very often people that are interested in taking a practicum in a Frisk have some interest in becoming a school counselor or a therapist that's going to work with kids and families. So I'm hopeful that you would get good candidates that would have real value for you. Again, we certainly understand that just that first initial, like training them up, so to speak, is time consuming on your part, but hopefully this is to benefit you, not just to be a burden on you. There are regions where, like I said, it's not just students, it could be anybody. And I know in Kentucky River, we have I think still have a candidate that is a retired person who just really knows a lot and has a lot of interest in helping kids and families in his community. And this is a way he's going to do that. And so, I mean, I think he brings a different skill set, and he won't have a, college or university performance plan he has to work on or anything like that. And potentially he's got in his mind how many hours he's going to be able to work or whatever. And you might just be able to, have him do any number of things. You could do parent support groups, you could do kid groups, you could do, any of the kinds of things you already do. And I know off-risks operate pretty differently. Of course, it depends on what school you're in and whether, what level, if it's elementary, middle, or high school. But it would just sort of be an extension of what you're already doing, we hope. Does that help some? I don't know. How many of you have ever had students before?
No, I don't think so.
None.
I think it'll be easy for them to, knowing our Friskies, to find a task, that will be part of, that's conducive to the grant and mental health and behavioral health. And I will reassure you that, as we've already discussed in our 3 centers, and I'm sure the others as well, their summer programming is going to be very big and a large part of this. So there'll be plenty time for them to get in the hours, I know, in our region, Michelle. So.
That's great. And I believe, through the employment by the center, all the sort of things that you'd need to worry about, like criminal record background checks and drug testing and all that, the center is going to take care of that. So when they come to you, they should be ready to go. Now you'll have to work, of course, with Dane and David and Johnny and Charlie with, just making sure the school has the paperwork or the proof of those testings and things like that. But again, it's meant not to be a burden on the center, but a help.
Yeah, when we posted the job description, we have a lot of the same duties and requirements that fall in line with some of our like peer support, and then even some clinical stuff too. And then I kind of just threw in there work in support of assigned Frisky mission and goals, travel to homes of students for outreach. I left it extremely broad. So I just wanted to have something when we sit down and interview these people, we have a little bit more to tell them, I guess.
And is it okay to just say if you have students in mind or know of anybody that's in a program that would be interested, or even like Kentucky River's case, if you know of a retired staff person that would be really good in your area, if you will just have them go on and apply onto the website, which Dane can provide for you guys, like where to go do the actual application process. I mean, we're just getting started, so we are completely at ground zero. So if you have folks that would work great in your setting, let us know, because we want to plug somebody in that's going to, really benefit and help meet the needs that we have.
I think another thing, Dane and Shelley and others, that we could do is reach out to the colleges and universities that you're aware of. And if you need some help with that, I'm glad to. I know, UPike, the University of the Cumberlands, then Eastern, Moorhead. I mean, all of the universities have point people, if you will, in the different disciplines: social work, marriage and family, which is generally called family studies. There's human services at Lindsey Wilson. I don't know if anybody's going to travel that far, but
Jason
sometimes
Weaver,
you've got students that live in your regions, but go to school in these other places. And particularly in those summer placements, they love being able to come home or stay home maybe now and have their practicum placement in their home community, particularly if they plan to work there in the future. It's just, we've found in different regions of the state, it's a really good way to kind of have that pipeline to, you know, a future staff member for any of the human services field, to have them already know something about how the schools work, how, you know, the behavioral health center works, how the centers and the schools and all their other partners work together. I mean, it gives them a leg up just to be exposed to what we're all doing. So don't assume that, you know, they're not going to learn a lot just by doing whatever daily chores you have them need them to do. They're going to learn the system. They're going to learn a lot about how it all works. And you're going to find out a lot about them as potential future employees or whatever. So.
Shelley or Dane, in the chat, Cecilia's asking if you guys can post the link to the application, if you have that handy. Shelley, you mentioned going on and
Absolutely.
and going through the application. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
What other questions do you guys have?
Hi, this is Dave Matthews. We talked a little bit about hiring, and we've hired 4 and we have 3, and we're still looking for 3 more. What are you guys doing for recruitment, or what do you suggest for recruitment? We've had these 3 vacancies posted now for several months and haven't been able to fill them. Do you have any suggestions?
Dave, I'm not sure if it'll help, but I know they mentioned some of the universities and colleges in the areas. I know Alice Lloyd, probably pretty close to you guys. One thing we've been trying to work is, like Michelle said, maybe some of these practicum students, even though it's kind of late in the semester, maybe trying to get a jump start on maybe the students that's looking to do the practicum in the summer or fall. And I know a lot of times with the practicums, these students are doing it for free. So if there is an opportunity to have maybe like a paid practicum, that is very attractive. And, so that's one thing we've been trying to work is to maybe get in touch with some of the schools. I've been in touch with Miss Deidre Robinson. She does the Moorhead program through Prestonburg campus and at the main campus in Moorhead. So I can reach out to her and, if we get any extra applicants, I don't care a bit to send them your way.
And vice versa, Dave. I'm one of the gentlemen that work at Lindsey Wilson works for us, and he has 9 students, and they're close to Harlan, but he has a couple that are like Whitesburg, and I'm not sure. That's probably more your alley, Johnny. But I know that some of the students he has are not going to want to drive to Harlan or Pineville, that they would be closer to your offices or your Friskies in the Whitesburg area there, if there's any that are participating. I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks, Dane.
Absolutely.
For years, we've had a psychology internship program, and one of the things that we do with that group, and it's actually a requirement for the internship, is to have a monthly colloquium, a monthly event where we bring all of them together to do some training with them. And I guess, would it be the local, wherever they're placed, or could it be done regionally or even over the 3 regions, to have some kind of Zoom meeting where they have some training of interest? One training that I would be interested in having them receive is disaster behavioral health, working with families and youth who've experienced a disaster, and have them all just a little more oriented towards disaster response and community resilience and what the role of the Frisky might be with community resilience, building up the community so they're able to sustain the inevitable, it seems like, disasters that we're having in this region. Well, and all three regions really. So if there was a monthly gathering of some kind, do you see that happening on the Frisky region level, or have you given any thought to those sorts of things?
David, I might be able to speak a little bit to that. So a lot of the regional interagency councils were given funding from this grant. I think it was like a pretty good amount of money actually to do some community outreach. And I think they're just now in places where they're trying to figure out how to allocate those funds or spend them out. So I don't mind, especially here in the Cumberland River region, to bring it to our REACT to see if they may be willing to host some kind of community virtual meeting or something to talk about the topic you're referring to. And like, if you could find out who does the regional interagency council in your area, they may be able to do that as well. I mean, I think it's definitely a possibility. And since they're already focusing on the outreach part, it may be something that they can take on and do, and then invite everybody in the community to be a part of. Just an idea.
I love that idea. I think that it's fabulous. I also just want to share that Frisk, not specific to that. I'm not sure if we have anything specific to that, David. I think it's a great idea. But we have a conference in July that if the students are around, or if these folks are around, they are, I think they should jump on board for that. It's going to be virtual and it's going to be amazing. So they can be a part of that. And then also we have some stuff that's in our Google Classroom for new folks that we can do as part of onboarding, just to get them familiar with Frisk and part of that community resiliency piece that you're speaking of, which is kind of threaded throughout a lot of our work. So I will just throw that out as well.
Well, let me ask that question. Do we expect the students to work over the summer?
I think it's going to depend, like Michelle said, on the student. On what they need. If we have somebody that is in the spring semester and they're just gonna want to get all their hours in, I think they'd have to work with the Frisk and with you guys to kind of figure out how they're going to get those hours in. Schools are going to be doing things over the summer. We do every summer. So there's going to be opportunities, but there'll be a one-on-one kind of thing. You have to work with the Frisk. And then of course we are going to have school starting back in August. This grant goes through September. And so there's always a big push to kind of do something, kind of a back to school type thing. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, I think, in our centers. Obviously that's going to be working with each individual center to see exactly what they're going on, how they're plugged in. But we're going to be at work.
How many hours do they complete under the Practicum program?
It depends on whether they're bachelor's or master's level, or even doctoral level. Sometimes we've had some doctoral level. And it somewhat depends on what program they're in, like, whether they're in social work or whatever. But usually undergrad is less, and it's, 10, 12 hours a week. And master's level is usually, upwards of 20 hours a week. Although, like I said, sometimes they'll need to for their school schedule, and it'll help you sometimes too to have them 30 hours one week and no hours the next week, and kind of do it like that. Especially like if you had summer, we used to use them all the time for summer programs where we'd have them work 3 8-hour days, and you'd have 2 or 3 students and they'd split it up. But at least then they like to kind of get their hours over with and get them in, and then they fill your need because they're there all day for whatever event you might have. So it really can, I think, depend on your needs as well as the students, needs and abilities or willingness to do something. But I don't think there's any really strict guidelines, other than usually if they're actually a practicum student, they have a set number of hours in a given semester that they have to complete.
The job descriptions for them would not be any different if they're a doctoral student or AB degree or social work degree?
Well, yeah, sometimes I think the job descriptions might encompass what could happen across the field, you know, like it might say, you know, I don't know, brief counseling with, you know, children or families, and that probably wouldn't apply as much to a master's level, I mean,
Right.
to a bachelor's level, but it would apply, you know, to the others potentially. I'll tell you, somebody else sometimes you get are just individuals who have, you know, what I call kind of off degrees that are still interested in having this kind of experience. Of some kind, even like sociology students or something like that. And so there's a lot of different variables that could play into, you know, like what they actually do, boots on the ground. But I don't want you to think that they have to have some real high level job duties all the time either. I mean, they might just sort clothes, go out and, you know, try to contact kids and families, run support groups or assist with running the support groups, or you know, maybe you'll get somebody with lots of good tech skills and they can help you set up the virtual meetings or the virtual events or whatever you might do with kids and families. They might tutor a child. They might tutor a child on how to use Zoom, you know, tutor the child and the mom on how to use their Chromebook, or I mean, it could be any number of things. And, you know, they're just sort of there for to assist you.
I was going to ask, I have a general idea of what to do with the initial $7,000, and but I think I would have more, I need more ideas on what to do with the second amount of money and what types of resources we have available, particularly in collaboration with school districts and staff.
So that was one of the reasons why we wanted to give you more time instead of, you know, splitting the money in half. We wanted to, you know, give you a little bit initially and give you a little bit more time. And so I think that's a great question, and we can totally take a second to brainstorm. I also think that having those conversations at the regional level might be helpful as well. And then also, we are always, if you can't get anywhere, you know, here, if you don't get any ideas here that's going to fit for you, or at the regional level, we're always happy. Your regional program managers are always happy to lend some support to that as well. So we will help you no matter what. So I just want to say that up front before we kind of go into that. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? What are you going to do with the money?
Well, for the first $7,000, our plan is we have several retired counselors, and in our district, we only have counselors that work at multiple schools, so they don't get to do actual counseling services that often. So our plan is to, we're now back in session 4 days a week, and we're going to target our elementary and middle school students with having retired counselors available throughout now until the end of the school session, and which ends early May.
That sounds like a great use of them. And just my ignorance, but why wouldn't you just, unless they don't want to, continue that with the next amount of funding? It's not enough, or it's?
I think it would be enough, and we may do that. I just don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if they're coming in for summer school, that's a thought to continue that service. And then if they're not doing in-home, if everybody's comfortable with that, I think is a great use of those funds. You could supplement for travel and extra time, getting, you know, meeting the kids where they are. Or if you have food service that's going out this summer, you know, having a group go along with them, and as the kids are coming to get their lunch at common areas in parks or project, you know, housing or trailer parks or wherever you kind of do those hubs. I'm not sure what your community looks like. You could have that be a place where they engage students and do an activity that's going to promote some kind of resiliency or prevention activity, or you could have them do some one-on-ones or connect with parents and make sure parents are getting what they need, make sure they know how to access services. I mean, those are all things that I think would make sense and would go back to resiliency and prevention, if not intervention, if you're actually providing the one-on-one service in that setting. And that's for the ones that aren't coming to you. I'm not sure what your plan is for summer school. I know there's a lot of federal funding to promote and prop up kids who might need additional supports, but having those additional supports available to them as they're coming back to school over the summer, I think will be an excellent idea. And then continuing on through the fall as you can. I think if you do the math on that and you see how much you can spend, and then you look at what's left, I think that might get you pretty far, but we're happy to offer other stuff if you don't spend it all with that. Sounds like that's what your need is. And that's what I've heard from, a lot of coordinators, that there's a lot of just concern around the needs when the kids are coming back and they're here 4 or 5 days a week. I think by the end of the month, all our schools are going to be back at least 4 days a week. Having those behavioral health needs, mental health needs, or parent support needs, either way, I think we're gonna see more and more need. I think everybody thinks we're okay, and because we're getting back to normal, everybody's like, okay, we're all right, and a lot of people are not all right. We're not okay. And so I think that we're going to see more of that happen. It's going to play out and look differently in schools. But I think being able to identify that, being able to screen that, being able to purchase technology to do some screening very quickly is another good use of. There's just lots of ways you could go with this. But I think that I've heard a lot about mental health, behavioral health need, and then also just any kind of parent support. So.
And even teacher support.
Yes, so staff wellness. Yes, thank you, Michelle.
And AIDS.
I have a question for Kenneth. And who else is from Letcher County? I forget.
Jennifer Honeycutt.
Jennifer. Oh, yes. I've done some work in Jenkins over the last few years. And is the Jenkins schools going to be involved with the Frisks, or do they have separate ones?
We are completely separate districts, so I'm not aware of their involvement with us.
Yeah, they're not involved in this particular project, no.
Well, I know from my work in Jenkins, what was needed was planning safe routes to schools, helping identify ways that students at all levels could get to school without having to drive or having someone drop them off. Do you see that as an issue in your district in Letcher?
No, not as much, no.
Is that because you rely on school buses rather than kids biking or walking?
Yes.
Any other questions? Just talking through some of the thoughts around how to spend the money, is that helpful? Is that a stressor that you all have? What am I going to do with this money? Or or you're like, nah, I got it. I had it spent yesterday in my head, which is fine. We just want to make sure that you guys leave this meeting with more answers than questions. That's the goal. And I love that Michelle said staff wellness. I can't believe I didn't mention it. I think that is a great use of some of these funds. And I think Doug said something.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that we've had conversations in our 3 centers. And as you mentioned before, there's a lot of money coming down the pike for extended school services and programming and tutoring and summer programming. So transportation is one of the biggest barriers that we have in Eastern Kentucky. And so the goal is there's going to be so many different types of programming available for credit recovery, and we're going to do some resilience and camps, kind kind of building off of these other types of programming that they're going to be doing in the schools. So transportation is something that was really they're looking forward to in our region as well. So just wanted to mention that there's, I guess, some good flexibility in what we were able to do. And it should come at the level based on everything we do in Frisk as well, which is designing programs based on needs.
Thank you, Doug.
And the grant talked about, you know, breaking down barriers. And so, of course, for Kentucky, transportation is always the #1 barrier. So it is a doable activity, if you will. But
yeah, thank you.
Someone has mentioned perhaps like a behavioral inventory or something. And I think I've heard some districts may be doing that. Is there a resource regarding that?
You mean like a screener? Like
yes.
Yeah. Michelle, do you want to answer that out?
yeah, there's lots of different ones. I think really from my vantage point, I would rather you talk with your local CMHC, or like Dave Matthews, I think is who you would talk to. They have a lot of different tools they use, and depending on, you know, when and how you're using it, you might use a different tool, but there's usually what we call short screeners that are, you know, just sort of some like brief questions. And if they answer certain ways, then you might need to go to a little longer screening and have a more in-depth conversation, either right then or at a different time with a youth or a family. So I feel like, Dave, not to put you on the spot, but don't you think that'd be better for you to provide those resources than me? Because mine would be kind of global and yours would be more what you all use in your centers.
Yes, I'd be happy to, Ken. Just give me a call or email me. We can set something up. One thing that I've been looking at recently is a community-based behavioral health inventory based upon the impact of disasters. And whenever there's a disaster, you know, the county emergency manager counts the roads, bridges, and buildings that are impacted. But it's really up to behavioral health folks to take a look at how the families are impacted. And there's actually a literature and equations to use to calculate what the behavioral health needs are based upon the number of families impacted and the types of impacts. You know, having that kind of inventory could help us identify whether or not there's a greater need in a community or a county and what type of need there is. We've done some things online with YMT helping us out, and we've had so far about 1,500 people respond to that. And so we've been doing a lot of follow-up with those that have asked for the follow-up. I'd be happy to share with you what I've got, and also you know, ideas for having the students help out with that. I think whenever you do that kind of work, it behooves us to do some family support groups after that. You know, try to establish a linkage between what we learn and what we do. So I'm happy to help out there.
There's quite a few virtual support groups kind of going on across the state too. And, you know, there's things to model, but there's also things you can refer folks to. The Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children. I'll try to put it in the chat box or get it to Melissa to send out. But, you know, they have a lot of virtual parent support groups and things going on right now.
Yes, and hopefully we can get back to face pretty soon.
Yes.
But in the meantime, one of the issues is, do families have access to Zoom?
Right.
Then we don't want to exclude the people that don't. Somehow we have to reach out. The students could be a big help. I bet we could come up with the resources through KY ASAP. I know they've been funding some computers for children and internet access for families. So coming up with some outreach to identify which families need the Zoom access and hopefully keep going. Thank you, Johnny, for the suggestion.
I think that's another place to think about the regional interagency councils too, because they're interested in sort of community-wide projects as well.
I love that. Anybody else have any questions? I know Melissa's getting ready to say. Go ahead, Melissa. Go ahead.
I was going to say we have come to our hour mark, and I want to be respectful of your all's time, but I also don't want to cut off any questions that might still be out there. So we'll have this be our last call for questions. Well, for right now. I mean, obviously you can still ask questions, but for this particular phone call, does anybody else have anything we need to bring to the table? We have recorded this session and we'll be making that available to folks. If somebody was not able to attend with you today, I will send that link out through Amy and probably the RPMs. Do a little editing, trim some things off the front and off the end, make it pretty, and we'll get that link out to you guys in the next few days. But I wanted to again thank you all for joining us this morning, and we're going to do some great work out there with this, and I think it's really needed in the communities right now. So thank you all for everything that you do, and everybody have a great rest of their afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.